Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with the political journalists Theo Usherwood and Zoe Grunewald. And let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, defence spending is the lead story on the front of the Mail. It says Labour is accused of a U-turn after appearing to water down a crucial military spending pledge. That story is also on the front of the Daily Telegraph. Their headline, Starmer's defence strategy in disarray. Ukraine's drone attack on Russian air bases leads the Times. And reacting to news that nearly 1,200 migrants crossed the Channel yesterday, the Metro carries the Defence Secretary's comments that the UK has lost control of its borders. The Guardian reports that exercise can help to stop cancer from returning, making it more effective than drugs. That's according to a landmark study. The Mirror reports that 5 years on, a donor law is helping to keep thousands of people alive. And the Daily Star reports that June will hit 31 degrees Celsius thanks to a Spanish scorcher. They don't mention when exactly in June, though. Anyway, we're joined tonight by Theo Usherwood and Zoe Grunewald. Thank you both so much for being with us tonight. So obviously tomorrow it's the defence review, and already there's some not so great headlines for the government. If we start with the Daily Mail. Their headline, Labour's defence spending retreat. And it's all about that pledge, whether the 3% of GDP by 2034, which the Defence Secretary had mentioned, is in no doubt, or whether it's just an ambition. Theo.
So we heard from the Defence Secretary in an interview 72 hours ago that, as you say, that pledge to hit 3% of GDP on defence spending by 2034 was beyond any doubt. It was going to happen, and it was as cast iron as the pledge to hit 2.7% of GDP by 2027. But now it looks, and this was when he was asked 3 times earlier on today whether they would be hitting that target. He said 3 times he equivocated and refused to say that this was definitely going to happen by 2034 to hit 3%. And of course, given we've got the Strategic Defence Review out tomorrow, it's very, and this is what the critics are saying, and the Mail's reporting on its front page, it's difficult to see how, if it's just an ambition, and this is the pressure that's coming from the Treasury to water down that pledge, Labour can actually implement what's in the Strategic Defence Review. We'll come on to the Telegraph in a minute, but it talks about building a nuclear submarine every 18 months as part of ramping up our military, building our military up again to the greatest extent since the Cold War. So that's the problem ahead of this big announcement, significant announcement tomorrow. Actually, if this is just an ambition, the numbers aren't going to add up.
So just sticking with the financing of all of it, what have you made of the messaging then, this confusion over whether the 3% of GDP is guaranteed?
Yeah, so we know that there is a proportion of cabinet ministers, but also people within the Labour Party who really do see defence spending as an absolutely key priority for Labour. You know, they see it not only as really important in these times we're in, where there are shifting international allegiances and perhaps we can't depend on our allies in the same way we used to, but also as a way of potentially boosting the UK's economy and boosting local economies throughout the country. But there is also a portion of the party who are deeply concerned about the state of public finances and want the spending to be prioritised elsewhere. And of course, in the middle of that, you have Rachel Reeves, who is in charge of the Treasury, who is planning for her spending review, as Theo mentioned, and has all these competing financial priorities and lots of cabinet ministers who don't want to see their budgets slashed and also want a piece of the pie. And I think those monetary tensions are really going to come to a head over the next month as multiple ministers are battling for money for their departments. And while defence is absolutely seen as a key plank of Labour's current strategy, there are other things as well that are going to concern part of the party. So I think this is a jostling that isn't just going to be about defence, but other kind of key perimeters of what is Labour Party policy at the minute.
But then would you agree with the headline in the Daily Telegraph, we can just bring it up, that Starmer's defence strategy is in disarray? Is that what it feels like now?
Well,
Well, I think there is real questions if you can't boost that money up to 3% of GDP, then there are questions about how you're going to pay for these things, especially when we know that this government has been grasping at any pennies it can find in the Treasury's budget. You know, there are going to be real questions about that, and also questions about whether these ambitions are going to continue on from the next parliamentary term, if they really do hope they're going to have 10 years in power. Yeah.
So all I was going to add to that was that defence spending has long lead-in times. If you're building a nuclear submarine, you don't just turn up in 2034 and build the nuclear submarine. You have to start that process early, and you have to start that process now. If the money's not there in 2034, you can't begin that process. For Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have prided themselves on ensuring that they are the guardians of the public finances and that they are going to manage those finances with the utmost integrity, and all the numbers are going to add up after years. They put it to the British public at the election last year, you know, the chaos of 14 years of Tory mismanagement. If it comes to a major announcement like this and the numbers don't actually add up, and they're promising, you know, to boost defence spending so that we can see off the threat of Russia, but they haven't actually put the money in so that they're able to do it, then that's of course going to hit their credibility, and of course it's going to lead to accusations that this defence review is in disarray.
I think we've just got the front page of the Financial Times, so let's see if we can look at it there. There we go. This more focused on basically what they're meant to spend the money on, Zoe.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So the main announcement tomorrow will be these new attack submarines that Keir Starmer is expected to announce, but also this move for the military to now be on a kind of wartime footing, so this war-fighting readiness, which is where he's going to want to see, you know, an army that could potentially be prepared for any threats that are, you know, that we are currently facing, and particularly going to point to, you know, the threat from Russia, the shifting sands in our alliances, and how actually, you know, this might be the need to put us on the most firm footing since the Cold War. So it's a rather major announcement, but of course, yes, all being undermined somewhat by the headlines that are saying, well, hang on, is there money in this? Is he going to put the money where his mouth is?
And it's not. Sorry, go on.
All I was going to add is in the third column of that story, you know, Starmer aims to hit 3% in the next Parliament. It is not a concrete promise, and as the paper points out, you know, James Cartledge, you know, the Shadow Defence Secretary, has turned around and said that these promises should be taken with a pinch of salt because the government can't actually show that there'll be enough money to pay for those promises.
And of course, this is all a few weeks before the NATO summit at the end of June, where actually the Secretary General of NATO mentioned 5%, probably unlikely to get there, but 3.5 very likely. So this will have an impact on the way not just our enemies see us, but how our allies look at us too. Absolutely.
And we know that Donald Trump had been putting pressure on all the European countries to up their defence spending. And there was we did do that. We did put it up to 2.7%. And that was something that really actually was quite politically contentious within the Labour Party and domestically, because obviously that included reducing our international aid budget. And I think we're going to see similar arguments play out here when you are, for example, reducing the welfare budget, the Labour Party is reducing the welfare budget, but trying to put up the defence budget. You're going to get more of those political conflicts play out quite publicly for the Labour Party. And as Theo was saying, these things are a long time in the making. But if you are cutting welfare benefits, people will feel that today. So it's very politically problematic for Labour. Let's move on to another story, although it's sort of linked. I mean, it just shows you about the reality of war, even though it's not on our soil. It is definitely between Ukraine and Russia. Front page of the Times. And it's this extraordinary, really audacious attack by Ukraine into Russia. Drone swarm hits Russian air bases. Zelensky called it, said it will go in the history books, Theo.
It's a remarkable attack, and some of the images you've been showing, obviously, on Sky News throughout today are incredible. So, and the Times rightly picks up on just the audacity, reaching as far as 2,600 miles inside Russia at an air base in Siberia. And these are, of course, bombers that have been targeted with these drones, which launch missile attacks that we've seen on Kyiv and other major cities, targeting civilians in Ukraine. So it's not just, I think, firstly, the PR from this attack is significant. It shows that actually Zelensky and his Ukrainian forces can continue to make real inroads and hit Russia in significant ways. But I think more importantly is actually this is going to have, going by the intelligence and what's been shared since these attacks, is going to have a knock-on impact on Russia's ability to strike within Ukraine. And that is good news.
Yeah, I mean, so it's also a reminder, though, of the realities of war for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, as much as this does seem to be a pretty impressive display from Ukraine of what it can do, particularly, the development of its drone capabilities and how it can actually strike within enemy territory in a way that it's not really been able to do before. Of course, everyone is hoping to get to a situation where there can be peace talks between the two states and hopefully a ceasefire. And of course, this kind of act is, potentially likely to undermine that somewhat. So as much as it, is, I think Ukraine might be hoping it will bolster their hands when it comes to further talks, and it might, put some fear into Russia. There is also the question of how will Russia respond? Will they respond with an equal act of aggression? And will that, be very damaging for Ukraine?
Yeah. And of course, there's that peace talks that's meant to start in Istanbul, and we'll see how that develops. Moving on, coming up, as Britain hits another single-day record for cross-channel migrations, what can be done? We'll discuss that next.
Turkey is burying its dead.
Whole families died in this collapse. Generations wiped out. I'm Siobhan Robin, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
Anyone should say, I'll do that, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
Sky News, get the full story first.
They are pushing forward, trying to get people to disperse.
What Prince Harry wanted to do was to eject me.
Is that your opinion?
It is. It is.
They were serious, coordinated attacks.
It's an entire generation that will have to contend with the horrifying impacts of this conflict.
The number of patients is increasing.
It's been quite some day.
Hey, what country are you
from? The UK.
Why don't you go back to your country?
You've gone viral.
I've ever had such a reaction.
It's just incredible.
Since the Oval Office meeting, have they reached out to you?
If Ukraine asks for help and its allies decide to help, then that's the end of it.
Criticism of you, the president, is banned. How is this a fair election?
A historic day here today.
Beth Rigby from Sky.
You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
There could be some more painful decisions to come.
Thank you. Thank you all.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me, Zoe, and Theo. Theo, let's start with you on this story. Front page of the Metro. Quite a stark admission from the Defence Secretary. We've lost control, and this is about how yesterday had the highest number of arrivals by small boats, roughly 1,200.
Yes, they've gone with your interview that Trevor Phillips did with John Healy on Sky News earlier. We've lost control, and then the express boats arriving like taxis as migrant numbers surge. Labour in danger of falling into the same trap as both Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak when they were Prime Ministers, of talking up the problem and making the public very aware that they're aware of the issue of small boats crossing the English Channel. But then, of course, now they're in power, they've got to do something about it. And at the moment, looking at the slogan from the Prime Minister, "Smash the gangs," it's very difficult to see how that's been affected up until now. And there's an interesting figure in here, and this is on the front page of the Mirror, of the Metro, and you raised, it was quite a, as we were just in the advert, Zoe, it was quite a punchy headline, but there's a figure in there of £480,000 a day that we're paying the French to foil the smugglers, as the French police are sitting there with their arms folded on the beach, watching them go into the water and cross the channel. And of course, there's an argument to say, after the local elections, does Labour go to the left and they realise the problems around the winter fuel allowance and cuts to benefits, obviously what happened in Runcorn and Helsby, will go to the right and recognise the problems of the hotels, 750 migrants were in Runcorn and Helsby. But they are for Labour, and it's worth noting that they're the same problem, because from Reform's point of view, they're attacking the government and saying, look at the amount of money you're spending either housing the migrants or trying to stop the migrants crossing the English Channel in the first place, which could, of course, go towards the benefits that are being cut for people in this country.
Zoe, do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think Labour have really put themselves between a rock and a hard place on this, because on the one hand, they're really trying to appeal to this group of voters that they're fearful they're losing to Reform, so these kind of socially conservative red wall voters who are deeply worried about migration. So as Theo says, they're really talking up the issue to show they've got a grip on it. But the other issue is that clearly what we have here is a breakdown of relations between us and Europe, because prior to the EU, of course, we had people coming over through irregular means or legal migration, whichever you prefer to call it. But the small boats crossings really rocketed because we lost that returns agreement that we had with the EU, and we also lost that cooperation on the border that we had with France. So Keir Starmer is now trying to put together a renewed package of relations with the EU, and we saw that with his deal with von der Leyen the other week. But really what we have is, the impact of Brexit, which is that you do have an increase in these small boat crossings because there is a new business opportunity for these criminal gangs to exploit these people. And what you really need probably is closer relations with the EU to sort this particular issue out. Yeah. But again, that is the sort of thing that group of voters would not want to do, and Reform would attack them for.
Obviously a massive headache for the Prime Minister. Let's look at The Guardian, very different kind of story. Exercise better than drugs to stop cancer returning. What is this study exactly, Theo?
It's from the patients from the United States, the UK, it's right across Canada and France as well, and they've found that actually if you do exercise during treatment, then it can be incredibly successful in preventing cancer from returning. I think it's an interesting study. I think there's a, particularly away from cancer, but more, as we have the conversation, especially in the wake of Manjaro, when it comes to obesity, there's always there's a tendency now to think about wonder drugs, and the debate has slightly moved off healthy lifestyles and exercise and eating well, and I think this is actually a sort of pendulum come back the other way.
We don't have a lot of time left, so for healthy lifestyle, I'm going to go with the picture of the Daily Star with a lovely beer by the beach, presumably. Wish would be 15 seconds. Tell us, Zoe, what is this?
Basically, the pubs are very, very happy that there's going to be a bit of an early summer here in the UK, because people will be flocking to beer gardens, because that's what we Brits do best. So maybe a bit of good news, finally.
There you go. Definitely good news. Let's end on that note.